Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome back, my esteemed students, and welcome again to a new lesson of English, lesson number 8, Scientific English. Let's do the first exercise, exercise number A. Work in pairs. Underline the subjects that are pure science. Circle the subjects that are applied science. Then explain the differences between the two types of science. In this box we have physics, botany, medicine, aeronautics, engineering, zoology, electronics, chemistry, geology, and agronomy. All of these words are fields of science or subjects of science. So let's divide them into two parts. The first one is pure science and the second one applied science. Here are the answers. So the pure sciences are physics, botany, zoology, chemistry, and geology, whereas the applied sciences are medicine, aeronautics, engineering, electronics, and agronomy. Pure science is the pursuit of knowledge in the field of science, but applied science is the search for practical uses. So this is the main difference between the pure and the applied sciences. What about number B? Number B says work in pairs. Look at this list. It shows sources of information for scientists working in a particular fields of science. We have scientific conferences, the internet, textbooks, journals. Number 1. Mark the items from 1 to 4 to show the most important sources of information for scientists. 2. How important is English in getting information from each of these sources? Number 3. What other sources of information are there for scientists? The answers. Number 1. The internet is becoming increasingly important for scientists as a source of information. Number 2. English is becoming the international language of science. 80% of scientific publications are said to be in English. Number 3. You as students may suggest TV and radio programs, CD-ROMs, specialist magazines, and so on, as well as search. Now let's do practice number A on workbook page number 56. Read the text on the next page. The paragraphs are in the wrong order. Mark the paragraphs from 1 to 4 to show their correct order. Check your answers in exercise C on coursebook page number 97. Let's read the text. English, the language of science. Since the Second World War, many scientific journals have started to publish in English instead of in the national language. For example, The Mexican journal Archivos de Investigación Médica was originally published in Spanish. Later, abstracts of each article were introduced in English. Then articles appeared in Spanish with a complete English translation. Finally, the journal was published entirely in English, and it had an American editor. The name of the journal has changed to Archives of Medical Research. This language shift has also occurred in other countries. In France, for example, a survey in the 1980s showed that nearly two-thirds of publications by French scientists were in English. Some science subjects have been more affected than others by this shift towards English. The table shows that the result of a survey of German academics. Over 98% of the German academics in the field of physics claimed that English was their working language. Other pure sciences such as chemistry and biology also had high scores in the survey. On the other hand, subjects such as law, theology, classics, and history used English much less frequently. Will this situation continue? Or like Latin 300 years ago? Will it be replaced by another language of science? If a scientist in Libya wants to communicate with a scientist in Japan, which language will they communicate in? The answer is probably in English. Does this mean that English is becoming the international language of science and technology? Just consider these facts. 80% of science books and journals throughout the world are published in English. Many scientific conferences in non-English speaking countries are being conducted in English. 80% of information stored in the world's computers is in English. Most communication on the internet widely used by scientists is in English. Statistics do seem to suggest that English is, in fact, the new scientific lingua franca. English, however, hasn't always been dominant in science. In earlier periods in history, Greek, Arabic, Latin, and German have at one time or another been the leading language of science. English became important in the 17th century with the rise of British science. Scientific publications in English, such as philosophical transactions produced by the Royal Society in London, were read throughout the world scientific community. But the position was soon lost to German, which became the dominant language of science until the First World War in 1914. After the war, the growing influence of the United States made sure that English once again became the most important language in scientific publishing. Now let's see the answers. So the first paragraph must be, if a scientist in Libya. And the second one is the paragraph which begins with English, however, has not. What about the third one? The third paragraph is the paragraph which begins with since the Second World War. And finally, number 4 begins with some science subjects. After reading this text and doing the exercises related to it, let's end this class. Thank you for being with us, and goodbye.